Welcome to Getting Real with Josh Boyer, the show that embraces radical vulnerability and authenticity. Josh creates a judgment-free zone for his guests to share openly and candidly. Listen in as they discuss life, philosophy, passion, drive, empowerment, and purpose. Join us as we seek to leave our world better than we found it and send ripples of positive, lasting change out into the world.
I'm here with Ashley Rogers. You guys probably have seen her on Instagram. Your naturopath, Ash, right?
Yes.
So I'm excited about this because I'm all about that holistic life. and so, like, I don't know who told me to, like, hit you up. I think it was Mark Carey, if I remember correctly. And, hold on one second. I didn't push record on that. We're good.
Okay.
That's all right. So anyway, Mark Carey is the one I think who told me about you. Do you know who Mark Carey is?
You know,
Does that ring a bell?
No, it's. I feel like it is a mutual, maybe friend of ours or something. But Mark Carey doesn't ring a bell.
He was he used to be Border Patrol. He lives in San Diego. I'm just guessing. Maybe it wasn't him. Maybe it was somebody else.
You know what? These days with social media and the connection, you never know. I mean. Yeah. But thankfully for social media and things like that, we do get to make connections like this. So either way. Yeah. It was totally awesome because whoever it was, so whoever's listening to this, if you're the ones who told me about Ashley, hey, props to you. Thank you. I apologize. I don't remember who it was. It's funny because I'll get hit up on social media sometimes or I'll see somebody outside of social media and they're like, hey, and they'll start like interacting with me as if like I know them. And I feel like a jerk because it's like a lot of times I don't remember like I'm not interacting with every single person that like I'm following or that's following me. Yeah. And it's not intentional. It's just your day. You just go about your day or whatever. Exactly. So I feel bad sometimes. It's like, I don't know who you are. And they're like, oh, like at whoever. I'm like, dude, is that what we're getting to? Like where like you're being like named by your handle? 100%. It's crazy. It is.
So
social media.
I want you to share your story, like how you got into being a naturopath, how like what was your trajectory, like from the time, you can go from the time you were born if you want, but like what was your life like, and then what were you doing that got you into this work, and then we can go from there.
Okay. Yeah. So I was born and raised in Oklahoma, Choctaw, Oklahoma. Choctaw. So yes, and I was raised, we had pretty sustainable living. We had, we grew our own food and, and even animals, everything we did was pretty much off the land, pretty much. So I think in an early, innate, what was already instilled in me from, we have Native American heritage and things like that. I was just always very much more into like holistic foods. I didn't know that I didn't know that you could actually buy things that weren't organic until I had moved out on my own. Oh, wow. So I just always thought that food was clean. Like I grew up with that kind of knowledge of my own. Yeah. And it's really fun. I tell this story a lot. When I graduated high school, I went to my nephew. He was also, we all went to the same school, obviously. My grandparents, parents, everyone graduated from the same school, same place. But my nephew, he wasn't super like book smart or whatever. And we went to like his opening night or whatever. And he completely changed his science grade, like from an F to like an A+. I'm like, what happened? He's like, oh, we were learning about gardening. I was like, oh my God, if that's not a true testament to exactly how we grew up. I mean, we had acres and acres of land and just, maintaining that and all of that stuff. So that is, I think it was, ingrained in me, but it was like a passion. Like I was born into that. Yeah. And then learning about Native American heritage and, herbal medicine and all of the things that we get from Mother Earth and the spirit surrounding that was something that I think was a blessing, to have taught to me. Definitely. From, that age. And so, I knew I always wanted to be in like the health world. But I think the healer inside of me didn't necessarily agree with like Western standards. And when I first started like, pre-med and all of that stuff in college, it just was not like it. it just did not sit well with me. The pharmaceutical boards and all that stuff just was not the way that I wanted, my future to be. And to kind of be governed by that whole thing. So, I stepped back from school, and I had some wild oats that I obviously need to sow. So I did that. I did the whole, going off, and I moved to Miami, and I was, partying and, got into a career that was just a means to an end, if I'm being very honest. Yeah. But yeah, my grandparents raised me. So my mother, I started with my grandparents when I was 7. My father, I never lived with my father. So, I had a lot of kind of turmoil within my inner child. And so I made the decision to get into adult film. Yeah. So I did that for a little while. And there's a little bit of confusion, I think. Like people, there was some shame, I think. It's not a super typical career for people to have, right. To choose. But, a lot of people, I think for some reason, it's been 10 years since I've been out of that business. Right. But there's still a lot of question, like, why did you hate it so much and all that? And I didn't necessarily hate all of it. There was just a certain, persona that got exhausting to have to put forward all the time and, just so many things. So I did that for a little while, and then...
How did that start, if you don't mind me asking? Because I know there's going to be people that are listening that... And like for me, like I have no judgment about it. I think there's a lot of people that probably do.
Right.
That there's like, oh my God, like look at this person going into porn or like whatever. And it's like, I don't see a problem with it. If it's like, if it's a means to like make money and stuff like that, and it sucks. It's not like, I think in our culture, in American culture, we've like made sex like so taboo. Like it's like something you can't even really discuss. You can't really talk about because people just have so many hangups about it.
Right.
So how did that even happen? Like, how did you get like involved with it?
So, okay. So let's go to root. We'll go to root cause here since we're, all holistic.
Let's do it.
So I was married. This is my first marriage that didn't last very long, but I got into some modeling. There was at the time a guy and his wife who were polygamists, and we became friends with them somehow. Nothing ever weird, like we never like hooked up with them or did any swinging or anything like that, but I was like 19 years old, 20 maybe, and they were like, oh, we're gonna start this magazine, and so will you pose for some of the pictures, and whatever. I'm like, well, what's this magazine gonna be about? Like, well, it's gonna be like nude modeling. I'm like, okay, sure. So I did that, and they ended up taking those pictures. They made their magazine. I don't think it ever did anything, but they sent those pictures to Easy Rider magazine, and there was another one. I can't remember. I remember the photographer, and I've shot for that magazine several times after that. But anyway, they flew me out as myself. I was using my regular name at that point, and one of the guys, he picked me up from the airport. He was the editor for Easy Rider. Scott McCool was his name. And he was talking to me. He was like, oh, this nude modeling and all this stuff is great. He's like, but if you really want to go far, you should become a porn actress. And he told me that. Like, he picked me up from the airport. We go sit down at the airport or the hotel restaurant. It's like right across the street from the Burbank airport. And we sit down, and that's like one of the first things that come out of his mouth. And I'm just like, this 19-year-old, 20-year-old girl from Oklahoma who I'm like, whoa, like pump the brakes, bud. That's never going to happen. Yeah. So a little bit more exposure to, the cameras and the action and the money. And I was sold. I'm like, okay, let's do it. Let's just go all in. So, but anyway, so that happened, and I posed for those magazines and all that stuff. And then my marriage ended up not working out, and that's when I was just like, okay, I'm done with Oklahoma. I'm done with the whole small town thing. I need like something about like my energy. Like I just needed that huge shift, and I don't do anything small, like at all. So I put my whole heart into it, and I went to Miami for a while, and then I went to my first like big adult award show, AVN, and I met with the owner of a company called New Sensations, and it was like instant, like he's still very near and dear to my heart. He and his wife run the company, and we're good friends and whatever. But I met him. I'm like, okay, this is cool. So it kind of kept me in this, in that world. It kind of kept me in this. I was very sheltered. Like it was for adult industry. It was very clean. Like I didn't do anything that a lot of people consider taboo, I guess, at that point. So I was contracted with them for 3 or 4 years, and I kind of just traveled and met people and did signings and all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, as far as the whole thing goes, I was very sheltered considering what is going on now. Like I'm so far removed from that world that when I take a peek back in, I have no clue like what is even going on. Yeah. There's so many things, but like you said, things are made taboo, and I mean, there's nothing to shame about sex workers. Like if you're a sex worker, like we really kind of need to shift that paradigm a little bit. Like there's nothing really wrong with it if that's the choice that the person makes, but I always, for myself, I knew that I wanted to have a family and to be a mother and to have kids. And so like I said, don't do anything small. I completely removed myself from that world whenever I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. And she's 9 now. So
somebody outside of the industry that you got pregnant with?
No, actually. Well, he's not a performer,
right.
But he's like a CEO of one of the bigger, the biggest company. But we are not together. At that time in my life, I was told I was ill. Like I was physically, something was very wrong, and no one could figure out what it was. No doctors, no specialists, no anything. And I was told I could never get pregnant, so I was acting accordingly, if that makes sense at all. So I always knew that it was devastating to me, like to be told that I couldn't have children. This is all I wanted. I mean, that's like one of my earliest memories. It's just like knowing that I wanted to have a baby. I would ask Santa Claus every year for like a real baby, like put a real baby under my Christmas tree. That's what I want. It's the most ridiculous thing. So it was, it was pretty devastating. So she wasn't necessarily, my daughter, an accident, but she was just completely miraculous surprise at that point.
I've known so many people that's happened with, that were like, they are told that they can't have kids. It's never going to happen for them. So they're acting out as if like there's no protection in place. Like, it's like, who cares? I can't have a kid. Like it is what it is, you know? And they were told by a doctor, you know, so they believe it. Man. And then next thing you know, it's like, oh, wow, I'm pregnant.
I mean, just seriously, like the body makes no mistakes. So we can get into that later. But like, there's just nothing is impossible, honestly. Like my client that just left here, she was telling me a story about how her and her husband's best friend was in a helicopter accident, and he was paralyzed from the neck down, told he'd never walk again. And today he's walking, like everything's fine. He's flying helicopters again. It's incredible. So yeah. So anyways, I just knew, I wanted to completely remove myself from that world. And I did, I think, but there is still, a little bit of a platform, so to speak, that I stand on because of my, that title.
You Patreon and stuff like that?
Yeah. So, I mean, yes. So I still do Patreon. I still have a creator page. I mean, by nature, I am, I think we all are. We're human. We're sexually driven, people as a species. Right. So, but I do still like to, share an intimate side. There's nothing like hardcore going on there or anything like that. But, people who used to follow that life per se, they can still find me there, doing some modeling and things like that. So, yeah. So, I'm thankful for for that experience, because it did open my eyes to a lot of things. I made a lot of connections. I have my daughter now, and then, whatever. And, people who knew me from then or whatever, they have followed me through what feels like a million lifetimes to where I am now, and there's like a different level, I think, of respect and kind of inspiration. I'm not saying I'm the end all be all, but there is a factor to it where, people have shared with me, their story of how they made such great changes, just being inspired and just, being able to share that and meet people and connect through that is, I'm thankful for that. So
what are some of the misconceptions about that industry that you would want to share, like with people that are misinformed or just don't know?
Yeah. I mean, so there are there are some things that the common, person thinks about the porn industry that are true. Fortunately, there are things that happen, suitcase pimps and drugs and all of that do happen, but not all. Most of the people that I met and experienced were really good people. Like just some really cool, open-minded, just great, high energy people. It really isn't like that's the scum of the earth career. It obviously doesn't attract sometimes the greatest people that you'd ever expect to meet.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask too. Like, is it like, I mean, you grew up in Oklahoma, you're raised by your grandparents. I was raised by my grandma, so like I totally get it. When you're talking about some of the inner child stuff where it's like there was some healing that needed to happen. Do you think that world attracts like more people that are broken versus people that are like holistic and like kind of like have it all together?
Yes. So I honestly don't know that I met anyone in the industry that didn't come from some type of broken home or broken past. But this still doesn't make them bad people. Right. It doesn't mean that just because they chose porn that they made a bad choice. They just made the choice that was right for them. They need that outlet to be able to express themselves sexually and, whatever. And they want that life. They want that attention. They like that type of captive audience. And so, I mean, I think we would be silly to say that, porn isn't a part of pretty much everyone's life at some point. I mean, look at the Pornhub Awards. Kanye West is hosting. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, Kanye West is now what he claims to just be this gospel, like whatever, but he hosted the Pornhub Awards last year. So, and I have a lot of experience with people on set that are religious people. So it's not that these people are just godless, right. or whatever you want to. I'm not religious at all, right. But there were several people that are like, hey, I love Jesus, whatever. So it just really all walks of life, all types of different stories within that business exist.
What are your thoughts on porn being bad for like society? And the reason I ask that, and I'll be candid with my own experience, mm-hmm. like I used porn as a way to check out mm-hmm. in many areas of my life. Like if my wife and I were not connecting, there was like an inner child inside of me that was like feeling wounded and feeling mm-hmm. like rejected and all these other things. So I would use porn as a way to just check out.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to address those feelings. I don't want to really think about it, or talk
right.
about it, or even have to feel it.
Yeah.
So I'd use porn as a like kind of complete checkout.
Sure.
And I see that it's a common problem amongst men. Like probably women too, but I can speak more for men just mm-hmm. because I'm around more of them. That porn is like a huge part of their lives. Like that they watch a lot of porn, and like I think that there can be a healthy balance to it where it's like maybe it's something you and your partner like watch together or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I also think it could be kind of unhealthy in a lot of ways and like desensitizing. So what are your like thoughts on that?
Okay, so I have a lot of thoughts on that. So I have had actually a lot of people reach out to me and say that they were able to overcome a porn addiction. And I've never understood that. Even someone who worked in the adult industry, I like sex. Like if you want to have sex a bunch of times or if you want to watch porn a bunch of times, I don't think that that's a problem. Like I don't know why the words like sex and addiction go together. But I guess if we're looking at it from like a mental health or like a disease issue standpoint, I think that there is a certain like wiring of the brain that can go on that can you no matter what it is, porn, drugs, alcohol, like if you're going to self-sabotage, you're going to just self-sabotage. So, right. And that can be a problem. Yes. But I mean, I think it's such a healthy thing. Like men need to have a very high sexual appetite. Like that is just when like being told that like if your testosterone is not, a certain level and all of these things, it is very normal and should be very common for men to want to have sex a lot. And, looking to porn or their wife or whatever is completely normal and healthy. I don't think that there should
right.
be any stigma. Like especially if you're like if you do anything and you feel like you have to hide it, that is an issue. So it can come down to like being a communication issue. Yeah. Like for instance, like for myself, I know, like, my husband has a very healthy sexual appetite, and I had to do a little bit of healing myself, because the way that like you said, desensitized. Yeah. I wouldn't necessarily say I was desensitized completely, but there is a different type of thing now that turns me on or gets me excited, and I had to relearn what that was, because what you see on camera, while it is exciting and fun to watch and visually, pleasing and just whatever, you're still on camera, you're still acting in a way. And I'm not trying to burst anybody's bubble. Like, a lot of those people really literally enjoy what they're doing. It's a very enjoyable act, I will say. But there's a lot of logistics to it, and opening up for the camera and doing all those things. Like, that's not what happens really in the bedroom. Right. So I had to relearn, like, what stimulates me, and it's a different type of, like, an energy or a way that I'm made to feel or something like that. And my husband does a really good job of that, but I know his sexual appetite is a little bit different than mine. Right. And I know that he will enjoy watching porn or whatever he needs to do to please himself, and that doesn't bother me at all. Like, I think it's healthy. It's healthy for him. He needs that release. He needs that it is for men and women, it's different. For men, you need that release almost to get that endorphin rush to, all kinds of chemical reactions that happen in the body, post-orgasmic bliss. Right. For men and women, it's different. It's like, for men, like, you need that to, like, get things going or to feel a release of anxiety, and women need to feel the release of anxiety first most of the time before having sex, because if we're anxious or for whatever, we've got a million things going on at any given time. Sex is usually on the back of our mind when it really shouldn't be. Like, we should really be utilizing our sexual energies and sexual encounters to, like, increase our our energies and things like that. So it is really different for men and women, and I wish it could be across the board. Like, we don't have to separate the difference between the men and women, but honestly, we're just not wired the same. No, and it will never be like that. So
yeah, I think, like, one of the things that I felt like came up for me with porn was that if I'm actively, like, using porn as, like, my checkout, and I say checkout because in a lot of ways it was a checkout for me. It's like just an easy fix, like, whatever, and it killed, like, the need or I didn't even need to connect with my wife. Mm-hmm. I didn't even connect. And even before my wife, it's like, I didn't need to go out into the world and connect with another human. It's like, I have a computer or a phone, and, like, that's my connection. Yeah. And I feel like that's the part that's detrimental, because it's like, you're kind of losing the ability to, like, make that connection with somebody because you're doing it with a screen. And then the other one that I felt was heavy for me was the sexual transmutation of it all. Like, I feel more energetic when I'm not jerking off every day. Mm-hmm. I have a high sex drive, and so that was something that I felt like I needed to control, like, and not just I feel horny, so I'm gonna go jerk off to porn or whatever. And it's like, what if I took that time and that energy and put it into something more creative?
So, like, it's like a discipline thing, like self-discipline and willpower.
Totally. Yeah. And that's what I was using it as, or that's what I use it as now. And if I feel the need to be like, hey, I feel like watching porn, like, whatever, I'll just check in with my wife and be like, hey, are you cool? Like, are we good? Like, everything's cool. And, like, keep that connection like, with her. She's like you. Like, she doesn't care at all. Like, it's not an issue for her at all. But for me, it is if I feel like, because I've never hid it from her, but I've also never really communicated it to her either. Yeah. So it's like, I just feel like keeping that open line with her, like, makes me feel better about it. And, like, I'm not, like, the little boy that's, like, checking out to go hide in the bathroom. And the other concern for me, I think, is because I have 4 sons, like, I want them to learn how to connect with women, like, naturally, not, like, through a screen. Like, the chances of you walking up to a woman and her just dropping on her knees and blowing you, like, is not, like, that's not reality. Like, it doesn't happen that way. And so I think when you're watching, like,
it's like suddenly all 4 of your sons want to be like pizza delivery guys. You're like, guys, I gotta tell you something.
Yeah, calm down. Yeah. So I don't know. That's the other part where I'm like desensitized to, like, the actual realities of life. Yes. And yeah, so I'm not judging it at all. I just think that there's a lot of misconceptions. I think that my judgment or my, like, observation of, like, porn workers, you're the first one that I've actually, like, met in person, I think. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, a lot of them are probably from broken like homes, or a lot of them have like broken issues or whatever. And I'm like, what is that? I was like, well, the military is no different. Look at the military. I mean, there's some people that have like great family lives and everything's good, but I'd say like a large majority of us were broken people that we were looking for an out. Yep. So like we go to the military looking for a sense of family, looking for a sense of community.
Exactly. And something extreme. Something that has to
push the boundary.
It has to push the boundary. It has to push the limits because, you know, in my case, I can speak for me and a couple other, in my experience of other people, like we didn't get a choice to, you know, in whatever our trauma was, like there was no choice, like, you know, it was just, that was it. And I had to, you know, kind of on my own, even though my grandparents raised me, you know, I had to really be there for me, for myself. And I never really got the chance to like learn the normal things that some people do. But you know what, again, like I am thankful for where I came from and everything that I know because of it. I mean, there's just so much that I value that I think other people might take for granted, just not by any fault of their own. It's just they don't know any other side of it. So, you know, side of like life or like dealing with, you know, things that just, you know, it's just not suitable. Like I didn't have a suitable childhood. It just didn't happen for me. So I didn't have a choice. So yes, military, adult work, you know, what other extreme, you know, things that people choose. It's just, it has to be something that ignites you because for so long you have to bury things and, you know, try to calm yourself down and not be this mess of a person, you know, and so you just go off and do the extreme, I guess. So
did you feel like a sense of judgment from people back home? Did anybody know like what you were doing?
Yes. Okay. So, judgment only from the haters, like the people that, didn't like me to begin with. And, you know, you can't change anybody's mind, you know, but from my friends, from my family, no judgment whatsoever.
Awesome.
They, I mean, they, you know, they didn't necessarily understand, you know, whatever, but I mean, at the end of the day, I come home, I'm still the same person at the core, you know, the persona, the, you know, being Ashlyn Brooke or whatever, that, you know, that was just that. Like I kept everything very kind of, you know, separate and compartmentalized and all of that. So, you know, I really, like you're saying, check out. I would check out to be that person. And then I'd come back. I'd always come back to just being Ashley, just being Ash, you know? So yeah, I mean, no real judgment. No, I mean, mostly everyone just wanted to make sure I was safe.
Yeah. Do you worry that your kids will one day like see some of your films or anything like, does that bother you? Do you think about it? Is it? It scares me just as bad as thinking of one day I'm going to take my final breath. It really, really worries me, especially for my daughter. Wow. More
so. For a couple of different reasons, but mainly because she is very, very strong-willed.
Yeah.
And she's very emotional. She's an emotional child. And I wasn't that. Like, she is, God, she's an incredible kid, but she's so many things that I wasn't when I was a child that I'm trying to like. It's like even the silliest things. Like she's already 5 foot tall and I'm 5'2". Right. Her dad's 6'5". Yeah. So it's just something like that. Like I was never a tall girl. Right. So helping her navigate through being the tall girl at school is a thing. I don't relate to. So we have a lot of kind of things that, you know, she is teaching me about life. Yeah. And so for her to ever, you know, there will be a day that she finds out and I will have to literally answer to my child of, you know, why I made the decision I made. And whenever, you know, I found out I was pregnant with her or whatever, and I wanted to start a family, that like I was able to completely walk away, you know, and have the life now that I have, that I want, that I worked very hard for. I feel like she's going to have a hard time understanding that.
I think we, as parents, we all have stuff that at one point or another we're going to have to explain to our kids that maybe like we don't feel is something that needs to be discussed at the moment.
Yeah.
And I'll share something openly I've talked about on a couple other podcasts, but like, for example, when I was in the military, I got a girl pregnant and we had a child together. Mm-hmm. We were not in a relationship. It was just kind of like a one night, you know, just having fun type thing. And turned out she was from California, so was I. So when we got out of the military, here we are. And it's like, like, what do we do? And so, like, for me, it's like, I just wanted to be the dad. Like, I just wanted to be a dad, but I wasn't interested in a relationship.
Right.
But there's no wrath like a woman scorned. And, like, it just turned into this very terrible, like, dynamic. And then I got married, had a son, and it was like, oh, like, this is not good. This is unhealthy for everyone involved. Ultimately, I made the decision to allow her husband to adopt my daughter. And it was a tough decision. It was like, that's tough. That's not like something that's taken lightly, you know, especially with my upbringing. It was like, oh, like my dad wasn't around and my stepdad adopted me. And like, it was like, so it was like, it felt like in a way I was kind of like reliving the sins of my father, you know? And I was like, dude, I don't want to have to do that. But it just felt like it was the right decision at the time for everyone that was involved. And then, you know, years went by, 10 years went by, and then she resurfaced and went through another court battle and all these other things. And a lot of people asked, like, were you going to like invite your daughter like back into your life as a result of all this stuff? And I made the decision, no, I'm not going to. And I knew that I was going to get a lot of judgment for that. Like from even my own family, potentially. Like my immediate family was in 100% support, you know, like absolutely. We understand your position. We understand why. But I knew that like at one point I'm going to have to talk to my sons about it. I'm going to have to explain to them like what happened, why it happened, and what my thought process was behind the whole thing. And then I'm pretty certain like my daughter will come find me. Like she's still in California. I know exactly where she is. She knows where I am. And she's almost 18. So it's like, she's going to come and talk to me. Guaranteed.
For sure.
And I'm going to have to, I don't know, not bury the hatchet, but like just hold space for her to like process whatever grief, whatever anger, whatever hurt she has. And hopefully we can mend those fences, you know, and be like, listen, like this is why I made the decision I made. And I think as parents, like you have to make some tough decisions, some hard, like really hard decisions. Man. And for me, that was one of them where it's like, I have other kids. Like, so I'm inviting all this drama into their life when it's not their fault. And I know like, it's not my daughter's fault either, but I had to like make the decision to where it like, it was the biggest benefit, I guess. If that makes sense. So I totally get where you're coming from with your daughter, where it's like, there's going to come a time where like you made the decision to get into adult work. You also made the decision to, well, not really made the decision to have your daughter, but like you didn't know, but it happened.
It happened.
And so now it's like, you're going to, at some point, I'm sure, have to explain to her, you know?
Exactly. When it's like, I didn't know, like when I got into adult, I had this grandiose idea of what it was going to be like, and it kind of was. I mean, that could be with anything though. Like you create whatever experience that you want to have. So I went and I made it the experience that I wanted. Like I could admit, like I'm a Leo. I'm every bit of a Leo. Like I love attention and I love the audience, and I loved going and meeting people and connecting with their energy and all that. And I made it what I wanted to make it. And then whenever like I, you know, got pregnant with my daughter, it was just like, again, I don't do anything lightly. Like it was like a snap of a finger, flip of a switch. Then I knew that I wanted that life, you know? So it is hard. Like you said, you make a really good point. Like we're going to have to hold that space for them. But honestly, I don't know that I have been able to hold that space for myself. Like I just went from one place to the other because that's the choice I made. And this is what I want right now. I am living the life that I've always dreamed of. Like, you know, so I like, awesome. I got myself to that place. So, you know, and I did hold some shame. There was a lot of, shame from, one person in particular who deliberately made a point to tell me that I was despicable and gross and unlovable because of my past, because of being an adult actress. And it's my daughter's father, actually, who told me that over and over again. And it was despicable and gross and dirty. And it was just, you know, so I literally, like, that was what was said out loud to me. And it doesn't really matter if it's true or not. If it's said out loud, your brain takes it as truth. Like that, and then that is what you're going to have that reaction as. And so, you know, there was a lot of overcoming, you know, of that. And like my husband now, I think, is like one of the main factors of me being able to overcome that and not despise myself so much. Like, he was like, what? Whoa, I pumped the brakes. Yeah. What gave you that idea? You know, what makes you think that you are any less than incredible? Like, what the hell is going on? Like, he literally did not understand like why I could think such crazy things about myself. And so, you know, having him, I mean, he's my absolute soulmate. Like, I've said a million times, we've lived like a bunch of lifetimes together. Definitely supposed to be with him, you know. So it's like, dang, what took you so long to get here? You know? But there was a lot of that. So I don't know that I ever really sat down and had the conversation with myself in the extent that I will have to have the conversation with my daughter at some point.
That's a great point.
You know, so it's, you know, it really is. There's so many things to realize. Like, you know, my kids don't have the life I had when I was little, and I am so thankful for that. I am so grateful that they will never have to understand some hardships that I did. So yeah, I mean, I'm getting a little emotional, not in a bad way, but just, you know, it's just such an expression of like, you know, we absolutely live in every single moment exactly by the choices that we make, you know? So I just really hope I'm able to do a good job of, you know, giving my kids that platform, and hopefully they won't judge me too hard when Judgment Day comes, you know? So.
No, I don't think they will. And that's kind of where, like you said, holding space for like ourselves, you know, like it's so huge because I know, like, even with the decision that I made and the decisions I've made, like, over the course of my life, I carried a lot of guilt and a lot of shame and a lot of, like, fear of judgment of people. And it's felt so healing. And it's only been, like, the last, like, 6 months, I'd say, that I really started to open up and, like, be the voice that I wanted to be and come from the empowered, like, man, like, place, not, like, the wounded, scared, like, child.
Yeah.
And I think on the outside, I think a lot of people are guilty of this. I definitely was, of like putting all these walls up and like this armor in front of me and putting out a face that I wanted the world to like see. But underneath that was like all this like shit that like I wasn't dealing with. And removing some of that stuff for me has been like amazing. It's been, it's like healed so much of like my own like stuff that I've had internally, but it's also healed like a lot of my outside relationships with people because like, a lot of things that people were saying to me, I did the same thing that you did. Like, they would say things to me, and I would take that, like, as gospel. You know, like, my brother, my mom, my father, like, whoever. And it's like, oh, these are all, like, hurtful things that were said to me, and I took them on. But some of the work that I've done, I've realized that whatever people say to you is, like, their stuff. Yeah. They're throwing their stuff on you, and, like, I don't need to own it. I don't need to, like, take that on. It's like, cool, that's your stuff. You can have it back. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not, I don't want it. And then there's other times where like people will say things to me now where it's like, I can like hear where they're coming from, see what space they're coming from. And sometimes it's like, this is a teaching moment for me. Yeah. Like, I don't need to own that, but I can, maybe there's some validity in what they're saying. Absolutely. So I can like I'm like, okay, like maybe there's some truth to that. Okay. Let me like explore that a little bit, but I'm no longer going to take on these things where it's like, it becomes like all these like things like hanging from other people's judgments and things that people have to say and their opinions and their baggage and their this and their that. It's like, I don't want to do that anymore. Exactly. You know? How did you heal as far as like your relationship with your husband now? Like, what was his thought on? Because I think if I were to date, I had a friend, I'll use him as an example, that his wife is a stripper. And I used to like look at him like in awe, like, wow. Like, your wife is a stripper. Like,
how do you share your wife?
Yeah, and you're totally like cool with that. I think for me, like, I've always had this weird like fantasy about my woman like being with somebody else, you know? And I always thought I was weird for that. Like, I thought like there was something wrong with me, like mentally. Yeah. And I was like, but then I started talking to other guys, like, no, that's like totally a thing, you know? Right. Like swinging and all these other things. Yeah. Like, it's a thing, you know? And I was like, oh, okay. But I never knew if I could actually go through with like accepting that. Right. So I think it takes like, where do you think your husband's coming from where he's able to accept like, this was your life before, but this is where we are now, and be totally like okay with it and hold space for you to like let go of the shame and the guilt and stuff like that. Can you speak to that at all?
You know, that's a great question. So my husband came into my life when my daughter was like 1.5. Right. You know, I was a single mom living here in California, trying to afford, hard. And I kind of lived off a little bit of residuals from, that or whatever. But
Yeah.
it's tough in LA, especially as a single mom, So, I think at that point I had completely like flipped the switch. I quit dyeing my hair blonde or bleaching my hair, whatever you want to call it. I had long black hair. Like there was no part of me, I think, at all anymore that identified with her, with the past.
Yeah.
But obviously he grew up in Oklahoma as well.
Oh, wow.
So our families were close, very close.
Oh, so you knew him from
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
So he, even though like we never really, like our families were close, but we had never really, we knew of each other, but we didn't know each other. So he came into my life in this very, I think, vulnerable and tender time. Single mom, was not looking for a relationship at all. I don't know what I was looking for, honestly. I knew I wanted a family and stuff, to have a stable life for my daughter and myself. But I just was like, whoa. So the very first night we met, he had just got out of this really bad, really long relationship. And he was like out with our friends who grew up with these people.
Yeah.
So anyway, we ended up talking like all night long and like into the morning and talking about things like string theory and multiverses and all of these things that I had never been able to talk with anybody else about ever, especially on such an intellectual level. He's the most intellectual person I think I've ever met. We have such high vibe conversations, and like he understands. And this, my husband also didn't have a great childhood at all. He is the only person I've ever known that has self-taught them to look like inward, like to be able to think about themselves as, I don't know, just being like responsible for his own feelings and actions and things like that. Like most people project it out.
Oh, totally.
Like they want to blame anything else but themselves. So he is such like an inward looker and thinker. And I was blown away by that. I'm like, whoa.
What planet did you come from?
Seriously. Like it's not my planet, but like what in the world? So anyway, he came into my life at that tender, vulnerable time. And so I think he kind of felt a responsibility, so to speak, to be a, not a tool, but to be useful in a way that he like, people come into our lives all the time that we need, that we don't necessarily understand why we need them or whatever, to teach us a lesson or whatever. But he definitely brought everything that I needed at that time.
So awesome.
To like even me out, to make me complete. And you know what? People say like another person can't make you whole. Yes, they can. Let's be honest. The best relationships come from people who are like completely broken and fill each other's spaces, each other's empty spaces, And no, yes, you should be able to make yourself happy, but sometimes it's going to be another person that is able to show you that. So he, I think he really just, he came to me not knowing the person before, and just knowing that I was so passionate about separating that he, he was really able to do that. Even when I was making it such a big deal to do that, I really probably wasn't doing such a great job.
Right.
So he just kind of stepped in and knew that that's, I guess, what I needed at the time. So he enjoys that that was my past, and he's watched my stuff and he watches stuff
awesome.
now and whatever, and there's no real there's no any like thing bad surrounding it. There never was with him.
Right. Anything
bad surrounding it only came from me. So he was showing me that, even though he didn't I don't think he intended to. That's just him naturally, and like that was our dynamic.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What would you tell a younger girl from Oklahoma or from wherever that had a similar background like you, that had an opportunity to get into that world? Would you dissuade them from that, or would you say what words of caution would you give them, or would you tell them to just go for it?
So since I am not the type of person that you can tell me to do anything, like if you tell me to do something, I'm probably going to do the opposite of it. to a younger me, I would just say, like, just inform yourself, do research. Just don't jump into anything like that haphazardly, especially like nosedive into it. Like, I would probably give them a little bit of a glimpse of what day-to-day life would look like for them at that point, and what it would look like should they decide to get out of it and have a family or whatever. I mean, there are girls in the industry now that, they have no desire to have a family. They don't want to do any of that type of stuff, so it really just depends on what type of life you want to live. Like, what do you think is going to happen after that? Because I sure as hell didn't know, and I really wish that I would. And out of all people, I have no idea to this day why I did this, but of all people, I called my mom the night before, like I had my first booking or whatever, and I called her. I'm like, Mom, should I do this? And she's like, yeah, do it. Like, what's the big deal? And I'm like, okay, cool, I'm gonna do it. What's the big deal? Like, I feel like if I would have reached out to anybody else, that would have given me a more I don't know, just a more like
some more doubts or whatever.
Yeah, like more like, are you sure? Like, what are you thinking? What are your thoughts on this? Like, what's the end game kind of thing? Like, you got to have an end game.
Right.
I think with anything. So
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I apologize for asking so many questions about it, but for me, and I told my wife when I was coming here, that I think the person that hit me up, I still can't remember who it is, but I think they told me like, oh yeah, she went from like being an adult actress into being a naturopath, and I was like, huh?
I know.
So I told my wife, I think she used to be an adult film star or whatever, and she's like, you're gonna ask her all kinds of questions, aren't you? I'm like, oh, totally.
It's okay. You know what? Honestly, since then I have not opened up about this at all. I've done interviews before, and I'm like, I just don't want to talk about that. Yeah. It's done. It's the past. Like, move on. Like, I tell people all the time to move on. I do, like, on Instagram, I do Q&A Sundays. I didn't do one yesterday because I was really busy, but I usually do Q&A Sundays, and at least 30 people every Sunday. When are you coming back? Why'd you leave? Like, come back to porn. Stop messing around being a fake doctor and come back to porn. I'm like, what? Like, move on, people. Yeah. I have moved on, move on. But you know what? There's nothing, there's nothing to be ashamed of or anything like that. So I've tried to be an open book mostly. I have a YouTube channel, and kind of started that right after I quit the industry. And I've really tried to just be as open but as firm as possible of like, that was my past. Thank you for following me there. But if you want to continue to follow me through this, like, let's grow together. Let's move on to the next thing. So yeah, it's really weird. People have a hard time letting it go because it was so long ago to me. It just feels like a book I read or something. Like, it might not have actually been my life. Like, it was somebody else's life, Totally. So
I think people are all like, not all people, but I think most people are very quick to like kind of hold us in who we used to be instead of honoring who we are now. And I mean, I know I've experienced that a lot, especially lately, where you meet with people and they think they're looking at you from a lens of who you were a decade ago.
Right.
And it's like, I'm not that person anymore. And like, I know that you want to meet me from that place, and that's cool. That's your prerogative. But that's not who I am.
Yeah.
I'm not going to entertain like any kind of stupid stuff anymore. I'm just not that dude anymore.
Not going to happen.
And so I totally get like why people would ask you that. And I think that's why people have such a hard time of letting go of it. Cause like there was a lot of excitement and a lot of like, things surrounding what you used to do. And so
people think that I must live this like some type of life that I'm like, what? I'm supposed to be living these lavish, this lifestyle and just constantly having sex, and like I must be the horniest person ever, and my husband's so lucky and all this stuff. It's like I think people have the hardest time grasping that I really don't, like I have a very humble way of life, and that's what I like it like that. Like I don't want to live this crazy, extreme lifestyle, so I think that's another thing that people have like, whoa, I started watching you here, but now like getting to know you as a normal person, like you're actually really cool. I'm like, does that surprise you?
That's funny. My mother-in-law wrote a book, and or she did the music for her uncle's book or something. It's like some book about horses or whatever.
Yeah.
So she did the music behind it, and there's all this like cool stuff or whatever. So they went to the like book signings, all these like things. And so people were asking her for like an autograph and who she was, and like people that are in that world, and they were all excited. And so somebody asked her outside of that, and I forget who it was. It may have been my wife. Was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Everyone's going up to you and asking for autographs, and like, wow. And she said, well, I just feel like a normal person. And so everyone started making fun of her about that. Well, the same thing happened. I had a guy on the podcast, and he like sadly ended up succumbing to cancer, and he died. And I knew when we did the podcast that he had cancer, but I just didn't know what the prognosis was. I didn't know like what's like, is there a chance he's going to make it? I'm not really sure.
Sure.
Unfortunately, he didn't end up making it. So I went to his celebration of life at the college where he was going, which just so happens to be the college I graduated from and the one that my wife graduated from. So like I didn't know any of that when I first did the podcast with him. So anyway, we show up, and people that hadn't had a chance to really talk to him or like close a loop with him at all before he passed away, they had that podcast to listen to. So almost every single person that gave a speech that night referenced the podcast.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there like feeling like super uncomfortable about that. Like I didn't know how to like receive that at all. And then talking to people after the celebration of life, people kept coming up to me like thanking me for the podcast.
Wow.
And it made me feel just weird, you know, like I didn't know how to like accept that. Like, I won't call it praise. It was more like I was there for him, and I wanted to celebrate his life, and like I didn't want anybody to even talk to me about like the podcast. Right. But I feel like for them, it was like it was good for them. It was healing for them, and like I need to learn how to like just honor that and be like, that was totally cool. And then so when I left, I kind of made a joke to my mother-in-law. She was there, and I was like, I just feel like a normal person. You know, she started cracking up. But no, I totally get that. How people like they assume that like you're the person that you probably aren't, you know? It's like, I just have a regular life, man.
I know. And it dealt with that a lot in, well, I guess when I was in the business as well. Like I would go travel or go make appearances at clubs and stuff like that. And just talking to people and like, man, I didn't expect, you to be like this. You're a little bit different than some of the other girls I've met in the business. So I'm like, okay, well, and so I guess that was like one of the things about I was like the girl next door kind of thing. Like I was just very much the girl from Oklahoma. Like people would be like, oh, let's go. I didn't even know what a bukkake was for like a long time. I still am not quite sure I know exactly what it is. And like there's all kinds of things that go on now that I'm like, what the like, no, what are you talking about, stepsister, stepbrother? Like stop it immediately. Right. So anyway, I was very much naive in that world. Yeah. So it kind of felt like I never really fit in the first place. But that was like my thing. Like I was kind of the innocent one, like the one that kind of overcame whatever, kept that wholesomeness about them. But now, like I've gone through such like transcendence and ascending and, growing into, I'm not the naive little girl anymore. Like it's like very much like, just, matured and moved on to the next phase essentially. So, I think people do, they get stuck sadly on one like image of you or whatever. Yeah. And I've had to deal with a lot of, more so now, in the world of healthcare professionals, when it is very much sadly ego-driven and all about the accolades and all of that, I do deal with some backlash there. Like, some colleagues, some of them, the more, high energy, non-judgmental ones are like, whatever. But there's a lot of like, oh, I would never, hire someone or work with someone who has, a previous history such as yours. And I'm like, well, what does that have anything to do? Like, I guess I don't know. I guess I can understand some of that viewpoint in some way, but then again, it's like
I feel sad for those kind of people. Yeah, I really do, because it's like it feels like they're not allowing your growth. You know what I mean? Like people, and that's I think there's a lot of that in the world today where instead of people celebrating one another's successes, they want to hold people back and be like, you know, don't get too big for your britches. Don't be like this person that wants to like evolve past who you once were. And it's sad. It's really genuinely sad.
It
and,
really
like,
is.
I had a hard time when I first started realizing that a lot of things in my life needed to change. I had a lot, when I first started to make these changes, like I had a lot of judgments about people that were still stuck in the old life and stuck in the old ways of doing things. And part of my evolvement has been letting go of those judgments and being like, you know what, like, who am I to judge? Like, I don't like that they're judging me for me, like, making these new steps in my life and evolving past, like, old stories and old wounds and whatever. So I'm not going to judge them for being stuck. That's just their life, and that's what they're choosing to do. Hopefully, by my example, like, I can get more people to, like, not by me telling them, but by me showing them.
Yeah.
They'll be like, oh, wow, that seems interesting. Like, maybe I should, like, you know, take that view on things or whatever.
Right.
Especially, like, in the veteran community, for me, it was kind of a... it was weird for me at first because I came from this very like alpha type male stuff, very like macho bravado, don't be a pussy, you know, and there's a lot of me that's a part of me, you know, very gritty and tough, and I can get aggressive if I need to or whatever, but it's not how I want to meet the world. Yeah. That's not how I want to present myself at all. And that's something that I'm trying to teach my sons is like, listen, like it's okay to be extremely powerful. It's okay to be extremely tough and gritty and have this amazing part of you that can meet the world and protect your family and do all these things that if you needed to, you could. But you're choosing to meet the world from a compassionate, empathetic like place. Right. And that's how I want to meet the world, not from those old like whatever. And you can see it, or I can see it at least on some of the interactions that I have, like even on social media now, is more like I've been blocked by some people. Yeah. You know, like, oh my God, I talked about gratitude and empathy, and it's like people are blocking me. I was like, it's pretty sad. Yeah. You know what I mean?
It really is. Like,
it is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, those people, again, you feel bad for those people because whatever place they're in, that whatever you could have possibly done to trigger that within them must suck. Like, that must really be, like, if you can't even sit with the thought of someone else making you uncomfortable, like, it must suck to be in your own head. Totally. Like, and my husband was another proponent of helping me learn that as well. Like, you know, being compassionate and emotional. Because, so we grew up in Oklahoma, right? So we grew up with, like, you know, the manly men and the very kind of more traditional, you know, like, the men are the powerful ones and can't have any emotions. Like, don't have any emotions. Why would you do that? You know, and the women take care of the cooking and the whatever. And so I, you know, growing up with my grandparents, my grandfather was very, like, I don't even think he's ever told me he loves me. Wow. I mean, that's just Marvin. Like, that's what I've always been told. So that's what I had to believe, was that, like, you got to have this stone cold, you know, reaction to the world if something makes you uncomfortable. And so, you know, my husband comes along and he's a sensitive guy. I mean, he's a manly man, but he is also very, very, very aware of his emotions. And I'm like, wait a second, like, that is really cool. Okay. You know, I really dig that. And he had some trouble as well. Like, his father, you know, gave him hell about it. Right. And so, you know, he had some doubts about himself, and you know, now we're raising a son. We have a son together who's just turned 5, and he is like, I don't know, like, where he came from, but he is not of this world. Like, he is like the coolest, best, most compassionate, caring, smart child. Like, he's just such an enigma. And so I'm like, okay, you know, and then my daughter, who's very strong-willed, you know, very smart as well. Like, she's wonderful as well, but they're completely different kids. Yeah. They're completely different. So it's like, she's meeting the world in a different way that he's meeting the world. And it's like, we have to, you know, it's teaching us about ourselves too, because we have to navigate that as well. So, but yeah, I mean, you know, my son is just like, I'm like, do you even need parents? Because you're freaking awesome on your own. I'm probably going to screw that up somehow. Like, you don't need me. Yeah. Like, you're cool, because, you know, so, but yeah, so, you know, it's difficult these days. And, you know, everyone has, I'm getting kind of tired of the narrative, actually, but everyone has the inner child that they need to heal. You know, it's like, inner child healing and inner child this and that. And there's a doctor, Dr. Nicole LaPera, who's like the holistic psychologist. I'm sure you've heard of her. Yep. She's amazing. She's incredible. And I think there are a lot of people that could use that and do the work on themselves. But also, like, I am trying to meet the world now as a person who did the work and I healed. So maybe we don't need to be constantly telling ourselves we just need to heal. You know what I mean? Like, what if we've already healed? What if we've done the work? What if we're on the outside of that now? What if, you're not constantly in need of help or healing or whatever, like, what I'm saying? So that's a lot of like what I do in practice as well. Like, I want to see you for about, I don't know, however long it takes for us to do the work. And then from then on out, I want you to just send me a Christmas card and tell me that you're doing amazing. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like, I want you to be strong. Like we do. I mean, yes, we are emotional beings, and everyone has moments of weaknesses, but most of the time, the healing comes from making the choice to be strong. You have to be strong. Like, there's no way around it. Yes, you have your moments of weakness, and that's where you're going to find your strength and all of that. And we all go through that. Like you said, you had your emotional armor up, and we've all gone through that. Like, our turmoil becomes like our greatest teacher and our healer and all of that. But like, living outside of that box of like constantly searching for something that like externally that is not going to exist. It's all within here. And if you're healed, you're healed, great. Right. So I don't think life needs to be this constant work, working on things.
I like that. I was listening to a song called Time. I don't know who sings it. I just randomly found it. It's probably been, like, knowing me, it's been out for probably 5 or 6 years. Yeah. And I'm just now finding it because I don't listen to the radio. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, I'll send songs to my wife or my son or whatever, and they're like, Dad, that's been out for like forever. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm just not hip like that or whatever. Yeah. But anyway, in the song, he talks about like doing the work on himself, mm-hmm. and like always looking, like being restless because you're looking for the answers outside of yourself, but it's like it's right in front of your face. Yeah. And I see what you're saying. I think my hope and my intention for what I'm doing in the world is like helping people find the same things that I did. Mm-hmm. And that's all internal. That's like, you have all the answers. Yeah. But I think a lot of people are using the crutch of a teacher, the crutch of a practice, the crutch of different things because they can't accept the fact that, like you said, like, you're healed. Like, you healed some of that stuff. Okay, let's move on.
Well, a lot of people, like, it becomes them. Like, totally. That broken whatever. Like, they don't know what they would identify as after that. Right. Like, what, like you said, like a crutch or like something that they fall back on or whatever. Yeah. And I love that, you get the people on the show, you get them to tell their backstory, because a lot of times, like, we really should, the answer is right in here, but seeing, someone else go through that may just give you the piece of the puzzle or whatever it is that you might have been missing, to start your journey or to complete your journey, or, whatever the case may be, wherever you're at in your story.
Yeah, for sure. And that's kind of like with men, especially, like you were talking about your grandfather having, like, he doesn't show emotion. He probably never told you he loved you, mm-hmm. and stuff like that. Like, I'm sure you don't question whether or not he does love you. I think Yeah. But I think there's a lot of men that I see in my life that, like, they could benefit from, like, breaking down some of those emotional walls that are there. I'm also willing to accept that some people aren't wanting to change. They're not looking for a change. Exactly. It's who they are. They're stuck in their ways, and that's who they're always going to be, and that's totally fine. Right. But there's so many people that have come into my awareness, especially lately, that I could tell, like, they're hurting. I could tell that there's a lot of things that they're not dealing with. And it's like, it takes one to know one. So it's like, I'm like looking at you through my lens, and like, I know that there's things you're not really addressing. And when you're ready to, I'll hold space for you to do that. But I'm not trying to be your guru. I'm not trying, like, I want to be the guy that, like, helps you see your own awakening, helps you see your own answers. And then I'm on my way. Exactly. So I really appreciate what you said right there, because I think the narrative right now is a lot of, like, I think the intentions are good. Yeah. Like, it's like absolutely. The intentions are like, let's address some of the issues that we know are there, but let's move on from that as well. Yeah. Try to find a better path of not identifying with it as much. Mm-hmm. And I was guilty of that. And maybe in some regards I still am, with, like, my back, having, like, 6 back surgeries and blah, blah, blah. It became, like, a part of, like, my story. It's like, oh, I have a bad back. And it's funny. I find myself doing it, but I catch myself now. But, like, even this morning, I got out of bed And it was early, and I was like, man, I need to like get into the cold shower. So I'm going to do my breath work before I take my cold shower. And I start telling myself this story of like, oh, I have metal in my back. I have all these things. So like whenever I take a cold shower, I get really bad muscle spasms and all these things. And I was like, no, maybe like it has nothing to do with my back. Maybe that's just a stupid story that I've told myself forever. And it's like, maybe it's just me not relaxing into like whatever it is I'm doing. I'm so tensed and whatever. And so I'm like rewriting a lot of the old stories and like letting go of like some of the stuff I've told myself for years.
So powerful.
Oh, it's amazing. Like it's so cool. Like I got in that cold shower this morning and I was like, oh, this feels so good.
It feels so good.
Yeah, for sure.
That's so fun. I tell everybody that comes into my office or my life, like, you know, if you really want to like change stuff and you want to start seeing stuff happen, like you got to do that thing to get past your mind. And the best way to start is just take a cold shower. And they're like, what? I'm like, I'm serious. Yeah. Like I can explain the scientific reasons, or you can just try it a few times and, you know, come tell me that your life has like changed at some point. But yeah, you know, it's funny that you say that about your back, because I've had 6 surgeries. That's crazy. But I broke my back when I was like 13 years old. And still to this day, like it will flare up sometimes. And I always notice it will flare up in more like emotionally charged situations. Yep. So it's like last Monday, I woke up and I got out of bed and I was like, oh, what is going on? I mean, it hurt so bad. It hurt so bad that I was like, God, do I need to go see somebody? And like, what? I'm not going to go see anybody about my back. Like, I know exactly what's going on. Why would I do that? But it was like worrisome to me. Yeah. So, you know, I honestly, I had to, and I never do this, but I had to reschedule appointments, and like, I had my husband cut my back, and it was like all this stuff. And I'm like, what is going on? It hurts so bad. But then I was like, wait, it's probably because, you know, situations get tense or stressful or whatever. And I'm like, I think it is more of an emotional thing than it is a physical thing. Yeah. So.
No, it's crazy. I was just on a podcast that was released, I think Saturday. Have you heard of Move You Official?
No, well, I've seen you posting them, and I heard of them through you. So
they're like totally awesome. And on the podcast, I talk about pain. Mm-hmm. And because I've had so many surgeries and whatever, every time my back would flare up, I would go down this rabbit hole of just sheer panic and like anxiety of like, oh shit. What did I do wrong? Like, did I jack something up? Did I lift too heavy? Did I move wrong? Did I pick my sons up without being braced? Like, what did I do? And pain's not life-threatening, you know? And, like, some people, I was reading the comments on the podcast that they posted, and somebody was like, no, it can be life-threatening. You could be having chest pain. It could be a heart attack. I was like, that's out of context. Like, yeah. I'm talking about, like, physical pain as far as, like, injuries and whatever. I'm not telling you to ignore
like a medical emergency.
Yeah, I'm not telling you to ignore like massive chest pain and like whatever. I'm telling you that like for me, like whenever I would have pain, I would go down the rabbit hole of like something was terribly wrong with me. And the guy that founded Move You, that started the program, Andrew, who's an incredible human, he was like, pain's not life-threatening. You know, that kind of pain is not life-threatening. It's just pain. It's just your body giving you kind of like little signal that like you maybe need to make some adjustments in the way you're moving your body, or the way you're sitting, the way you're standing, or whatever. And since he told me that, like completely like changed the game for me. And I was like, a lot of people thought that was silly, and I'm like, no, you don't understand like the kind of anxiety and panic that would go into like my back hurting or a flare up.
God, it does. Like anxiety sucks too. Like if
it's terrible.
And a lot of people struggle with anxiety, but for those of you who have never struggled with anxiety, will never understand. But like, it could be the littlest thing, and then sometimes it's just your brain goes straight to being like, okay, this is it. I'm done. Yep. This is my last breath. I don't know what's going to happen beyond this point, because right now is done. I'm done. You know, so and a lot of people don't understand, I guess, that feeling. But yeah, I mean, the pain really isn't life-threatening, and the human body doesn't really make any mistakes. You know, everything happens because it's supposed to, based on circumstance or whatever. But it can be life-threatening to continue to allow your brain to sabotage every single situation.
Well, that's why I was so addicted to opiates and benzodiazepines and you name it. Part of that was because I was allowing my mind to go down the rabbit hole of like, oh my God, like this is terrible, like sheer panic. And I had to like rewire a lot of that programming when I quit everything. I was like, I need to rewire the way that I'm thinking. Yeah. And I think the other part of that, like you talked about the emotional side of it, and that's hugely important. And I shared it on the podcast with Move You for the first time, I think ever, and so I'll talk about it again a little bit. But like, I had 6 back surgeries, all of them being in my lumbar spine. They've scientifically proven that like a lot of our emotions are like carried in our lumbar spine. And I was like, interesting.
Yeah.
I was like, my childhood sucked, and like all these things were bad, and like I didn't know how to process a lot of things. I had a lot of grief, a lot of like things I was carrying around with me, anger and hurt and all these things. And I was using my back surgeries. Granted, I was in a lot of pain. That was true. Like I had a lot of pain. I had herniated discs. That was true. But my back surgeries were a huge checkout for me.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, cool. I can like have the back surgery. I get some sympathy from the people that I want sympathy from. I get drugs to kind of completely check me out of life. And then I'm good. Like it's good. Then I have a story to tell. And I didn't really own that for a lot of years. Like I wasn't owning. I was like, oh, my poor me coming from the victim. It wasn't until I started doing a lot of like inner work and I'm like, oh wow, I created a lot of this.
Yeah, you do.
That's amazing.
It's so powerful. It's like, you know, and studying what I've studied in holistic medicine and everything. I mean, yeah, you can, excuse me, like look at everything from a holistic standpoint. But the most powerful thing that I've, for myself or for, you know, with people, clients and things that I see, have been when they learn how powerful they actually are, like what energies exist within themselves and, you know, what they are capable of doing with just their thoughts and their mind, and, you know, learning that, you know, they are incredibly powerful spiritual human beings. And there's a lot of talk about like placebo effect and things like that as well.
You read that book, You Are the Placebo?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So, you know, so there's that whole thing too, but really everything is just within, you know.
Yeah. How did you get into? We started to go down the path of like how you got into naturopath. Then we went down the porn rabbit hole. So I apologize.
No, it's okay.
So how did you get into like doing what you're doing now?
So, but you know, I've always wanted to be again in the health industry and, you know, whatever. But I didn't know what level of like healer that I wanted to be. Right. But I, you know, since I did do things non-traditionally, I woke up one day when my son was like 4 months old, and I literally just like looked at my husband and I'm like, okay, I want to go back to school now. He's like, are you fucking insane? He's like, you have 2 kids? Like, what are you talking about?
What were
like,
you doing at that point? Like, were you working or were you
No, I was
home?
a stay-at-home mom. Wow. So yeah, I was like, okay, I'm ready to go back to school now, you know. So I found a place that I kind of did like some like telecommuting, like online courses and things like that. And then when it was time to graduate and do like my like internships and stuff like that, I worked with a couple of different doctors and you know, kind of went that route. So, you know, I didn't go a traditional, you know, like 4-year school because I didn't want to learn about like pharmaceuticals really in that capacity at all. So yeah, so the way I did it, I can do pretty much anything, you know, like I guess MD or ND could do. I just can't write a prescription. I would never want to. Right. So yeah, that's pretty much.
So what do you do here? Like if people come to see you, what are they coming to see you for, and like how are you treating them?
Oh my gosh. So it really, I don't have like a specialization. It's pretty general, like general practice. Yeah. I see a lot of people with autoimmune diseases. You know, we try to find the cause of them. Is it a hidden virus, a hidden bacteria, mold, fungus, something? What's going on? Like, what's the exposure? What's the cause? I see a lot of people that have like chronic pain and just finding the emotional connection to that. I do a lot of lymphatic drainage. The lymphatic system is something that I am very passionate about just because it's so useful in every single body. Like literally, like in our world, there's not a whole lot of things that we can use to just like put a blanket on a situation, but there are like a very few things that we can utilize, like lymphatic drainage, that everyone can benefit from. So when that happens, we try to kind of cling on to that, or I do. Because what I do is so bio-individual. Like you could be sitting here with one issue and another person could come in and be like, that same exact thing, but what's going to work for both of you is going to be completely different. Right. So, yeah, we just really try to utilize self-healing as much as we can. And then, yeah. What
are some of the modalities though? Are you guys doing like acupuncture? Are you doing cupping? Are you doing like supplements?
Yeah. So here in the office, I'm the only naturopathic practitioner. There's 2 other acupuncturists, and then we have a dietitian and whatever. So we have a lot going on in this practice. So if we do need to utilize each other's services, we can do that. But for me, I'm doing cupping, again, the lymphatic therapy. We do red light therapy. I'll do auricular therapy, which is like the needles or tacks or seeds in the ear. Just kind of, and for that one is mostly for like pain relief. There's, there are nerve endings in the ear. I don't think I can stick a seed in your ear and heal you of like, kidney disease or anything like that. Nothing like that. But there are pressure points that help relieve the pain. And so a lot of times if people are looking for that relief and they don't want to jump to like, Tylenol or painkillers or whatever the case may be, then we do still have things that we need to relieve the symptoms from. So we do some of that just until, we find the root cause. And once we find the root cause, then we can really, use supplementation. Diet is, probably 98% of what I do is diet.
Yeah.
And, it's very interesting because it's just so, I have a lot of information that I have to fight with that professionals or influencers are giving people that's not accurate. And I'm like, oh my God, like what happened to you? Like who made you think all these things are so untrue? But what I do as far as diet goes for my clients and myself, there's two things. First of all, the ancestral diet is not quite, the information that's out there is, like you have to really do the research and eat like what your great grandparents ate, like literally off the land. And then incorporating eating right for your blood type. Those are the two greatest healing like advocates that I've ever experienced. As far as like something you can physically do, like your mind obviously is, your brain, your thoughts, all that stuff is very powerful as well. But when it comes to health and seeing people heal, it's really just changing their relationship with food.
Yeah, totally.
So.
No, I get that. I think that there's a lot of like, unfortunately, like just so much information out there.
Yeah.
That it's quite confusing for a lot of people because it's like you have some people saying the paleo diet's the way to go. Then you have this new like carnivore diet where it's like you just eat meat and that's it. And people are like, oh, it healed me from autoimmune disease. Then you have people that are saying that like a vegan diet is the way to go and like don't kill animals and just eat vegan. And so you have all these like gluten-free, like all these different things that are out there that I think for most people it's like, dude, what in the fuck? You know what I mean? Like what am I supposed to do? And for me, I think what I found like that helps the most or the best I feel is eliminating sugar. Like if I just take sugar out of my diet and just don't mess with it at all, I feel way better. Like I'm good to go. What I've been doing lately, I'm done like ascribing to any kind of like diet. I'm part of the paleo diet or I do this diet. No, I'm going to intuitively eat.
Well, yeah.
So it's like if I feel like eating, it's like I will try my best to get something that's healthy, but it's usually I'll go for like what I'm feeling in that moment. Sometimes it's meat. Sometimes it's dairy, like an organic dairy or whatever.
Right.
Sometimes which is rare because I don't eat that much dairy, but like it could be fruit. It could be, I don't know, vegetables of some kind, whatever. But I'm trying my best to eat as intuitively as I can. I think the other issue that we're running into is that it's hard to get like real like land sourced food anymore.
Yes.
It's like you go to a store and it's like you're getting feedlot meat. You're getting like mass produced vegetables that have like pesticides all over them. And you have like the people that are like from the old school. I'm sure Oklahoma has a lot of this, but like all these hippies, they want all this like organic stuff, and it's like, no, there's truth to it though.
Yes,
there's like definite truth to it. Like,
well,
I said, call me a hippie, I guess.
I didn't know that there was food that was fucked with. I had no idea they were genetically mutating food. I'm like, why would you do that?
Right.
Like I grew up on this, farm or whatever you want to call it, garden, whatever acres worth, and like we never sprayed one thing ever for a bug. Like we saw there was no pests. There wasn't, and it's so easy to do. And most of the time, like we were literally begging people to come pick up vegetables and fruits and food because we had so much that was just going to waste. So it's really not, it's not that hard to grow unadulterated food. Right. So I still don't understand that. I still don't get why we go to the store and there's like an organic section and a non-organic section. I'm like,
organic.
I'm like, what's happening? So yeah, we are running into, that is the problem. It's sad. Nobody wants like inhumane like abuse. Like nobody wants that. I mean, unless you're a complete narcissist and just
I think a lot of people just don't care. I mean, I think they care, but like they just don't want to know about it.
Yeah.
So they just turn a blind eye to it. You know, like I don't want to think about that. I don't want to talk about that. Let's just, who cares? You know,
Yeah.
like, they just keep going about like just kind of like just sheeple. You know, just
Yes.
going through and not like thinking about anything, just kind of following the masses. And I'm trying to live my life, or I am living my life, where it's like I will ask questions. I'm like going to be, you know, intellectually curious about a lot of different things, and I want that for my kids too. I don't want them just falling in line.
Yes,
where it's
I
like,
know.
no, like question things. You know, like does this make sense, or like is what we're doing the right way? Mm-hmm. Like I don't know. It seems kind of weird, and I think that you hit the nail on the head with like there's influencers and other people out there, and that's part of the problem because people are following these people when it's like. Sometimes the information is great. Other times it's detrimental. It's like that's not a good deal. Like I wanted to create something recently. I was talking to my wife about it, that I wanted to create like just a little course of like how I got off all the opiates and benzodiazepines.
Yes.
How did I do it? And just create that. Like I'm gonna do the content of like how I did it. I was like, but the thing is, I have to do a disclaimer. I'm not a doctor.
Right.
I'm not claiming to be a doctor.
Right.
I'm not claiming to have all the answers. But the thing is, I want to help people.
Right.
I want to show them like how I did it, like, and be truthful about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem, though, is that you have like people that are just arbitrarily just throwing information out when it could be harmful. You know what I mean? It's like, dude, what are you doing? You know what I mean? It's not
exactly.
good.
Like they saw, I don't know. Like it will always blow my mind that like people are being scared of like certain fruits or vegetables. Like you can't eat too many potatoes, or you can't eat too many fruits, too much sugar. It's like, what? I mean, like, okay, yes, like everything in moderation or whatever, but like a diet where you literally fear a potato or something.
That's
like,
crazy.
What is going on? Yeah. So, but I mean,
I think the intuitiveness is like, for me, like feels just right. You know, like if I know, like, for example, like tomorrow, it's like, I know I'm going to go hike for 5 miles. It's like, okay, well in the morning, I'm probably going to have more of like a carb rich food.
Yeah.
Like I'll probably have some organic jasmine rice with like a little bit of protein and maybe a little bit of fat and whatever. Cause I know what my day is going to look like. And I'll probably have fruit so I can get my like, glycogen levels like a little bit higher before I hike. And then when I'm done though, after that hike, I'll probably want to refuel as well. So it's like just trying to be intuitive about what you're eating. Like for me, I try to avoid fruit after noon. Cause like, what am I doing like after noon time? Usually like it's not something that's really rigorous.
right.
If it is, then yeah, by all means have some fruit. But
Sure.
for me, it's like, if I know what I'm doing is like front loaded, then I'll probably have the sugar and stuff in the beginning. And I think that's where a lot of people get like super confused with it. It's like, it's not that hard.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just like map out your day and you'll be good to go. But I think we're in such a hurry to get places, and we're in such a quick fix mentality that that's part of the problem. Like everyone wants like an instant gratification for things, where it's like, I'm hungry now. I need to eat now. It's like, you're not going to die if you don't eat right now. Like you'll be totally cool. The other thing that like I've been talking to like my brother about this a little bit. And I was telling him about intermittent fasting. I was like, it's worked well for me. Like, I feel really well when I'm doing it. Like right now I'm not intermittent fasting, but there's times where I'll go like months and months and months of doing it and I feel great. He's like, yeah, but I'm diabetic. I can't do it. I'm diabetic. And I was like, again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not claiming to be. I'm not trying to kill you. But it's type 2 diabetes. Like you can cure it.
You can cure that.
I like totally promise you can cure it if you would just change like these things. But a lot of times, and this isn't a knock on him, I think it's just a knock in general of like most people, like they're putting all of their trust in what a doctor says and what a person with a white coat says. And instead of like doing some research on their own or finding the natural ways of like curing some of this stuff, you know? What would you tell somebody that's like, just wants to be optimal, that wants to optimize their life in some way? We talked about the cold showers, like that's a good way to start. But as far as like nutrition, or as far as supplementation or whatever, like what's the first thing you usually do when you're trying to get somebody back on track when they've been off track for quite a while?
That is a great question. There's a lot of things that I kind of use, again, like a blanket, like in general, that I always suggest to pretty much every single person. I think some of the most profound things that I have found for everyone is sitting in the sun in the morning for at least 20 minutes.
Oh yeah.
So you get that morning, those UVA and UVB type rays are incredibly incredibly necessary for our pituitary glands
Yeah.
to be able to produce all the neurotransmitters and hormones and things that we need throughout the day.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of people too don't really like sit in the sun for 20 minutes. The early morning sun is great. If you can't get up with sunrise, which is best, optimal, then, as soon as you wake up, just try to go outside for 20 minutes, drink your coffee, read a book, meditate, do some yoga, whatever. And then try not to take a shower for the rest of the day. Try to take your showers at night.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of different chemicals. Vitamin D, for one, is a pre-hormone, but there are a lot of different other types of chemicals and things that our skin needs to be able to process, like at a mitochondrial level throughout the day.
Yeah.
And if you wash that off, then you're not going to be able to do that. So I always encourage people to just get out in the sun, whatever. Do your workout. If you sweat a little bit and you need to wipe off with the towel or something, then, obviously if you have to go out in the world, probably shouldn't show up like a sweaty, barbarian or anything. But if you can stand it, try not to take a shower until night. And then always, dry brush before the shower. So like right before you get in, get a dry brush and just work up like with the, lymphatic system and, get the lymphatic system going. Take your shower, probably as hot as you can stand it without making yourself pass out, obviously. Yeah. And then at the end of the shower, do contrast showers, 2, 3, 4 times as much as you can stand it, do your cold shower. Yeah. Or just, take in your shower and just completely cold. You don't have to do the contrast part. But that really it helps with circulation, because when we're warm and all the blood flow is going all the places, that's wonderful. But it really brings everything kind of back to center, back to the heart, where the blood can continue to pump and flow where it needs to and things like that. And then sleep. Sleep is huge. You gotta get that good sleep. So, 8 hours is ideal, so my things are sun, sweat, and sleep. I mean, you need to be sweating every single day to some capacity. So we probably were just doing ourselves a favor here when we didn't have the air on just a second ago. Right. You're sitting here sweating, but having the detox pathways open every single day is so important. And there's, just like diet, there's the fads of like, oh, do this detox, do this cleanse, and all that stuff. And I rarely recommend like a 14-day cleanse or 14-day detox, whatever you want to call it. Rarely. In extreme situations, I will, but they won't be what you think. Like, we're just starving the body constantly. My detoxes are much different than that. But more importantly, I am making sure people every single day are doing something to open their detox organs, like open the detox pathways. And the best way is through sweating. Yeah. And, if you're not working out or whatever, then I'll recommend infrared saunas. And they are just so impactful for health. I mean, it's literally life-changing just to sit in there and sweat at that degree, at that level. It reaches deeper. Traditional saunas are good too, if that's what you have access to. Yeah. But the infrared is just, the capabilities of the light and the density of it and the cellular level that it's able to reach is incredible. Like, I've seen mothers with children with autism take their kids to these infrared saunas, and they're seeing so many positive changes and things like that. It's incredible. So sun, sweat, sleep. Those are my 3 magic elixirs. If you want to know what the 3 magic bullets are, that's it. I'm giving away the biggest secret in the world.
Right. I have this guy that I follow, and he was talking about sunlight for your butthole. And I was like, what? And they said that if you like sun your butthole before, like in the morning or whatever, for like 5 minutes is like being out in the sun, like getting the nutrients that you're getting. I was like, what is this shit? Like, I mean, maybe there's some truth to it. I don't know. I'm not ruling it out.
I don't know.
But I do believe that like sun in the morning for me, like it's where I feel the best. Like when I get up in the morning, I was hiking like first thing in the morning before the sunrise. I would get up to the top and I would watch the sunrise, and it was amazing, dude. Like some sun gazing and like
it's the best.
Just like hanging out there, whatever. And I just felt like my day was like started and everything was good. And the showers was another cool thing that it's a new thing for me as well. Is like. I don't always use soap on my body when I'm in the shower. It's like I'm not dirty, you know what I mean? Like I don't need to like be washing all this stuff off, It's like I just sometimes use water. Like with my hair, I probably haven't washed it for like, I don't know, 2 days or 3 days or whatever. It's like I don't need to put shampoo in it every day.
No,
it's
definitely not.
like I haven't worked out like I was chilling over the weekend. I wasn't really working out like crazy, so it's like I don't need to like get all gnarly with it. Like it's getting a little oily, so it's like all right, cool. Now I need to wash it.
Exactly. I mean, it's like you think, okay, I don't know how much truth there. So I don't know about like the sunning the butthole thing. Okay, sure, if it makes you feel good, then there could be the placebo effect, I guess.
Finding the spot to do it,
Yeah, but I can't. It doesn't. To me, I don't think like our ancestors, no matter how far you look back, like cavemen were not waking up and sticking their butt in the air in the morning. Like it just doesn't. It doesn't make sense. Like where did that come from? You know what I? But okay, it could work, I guess. Sure. But the whole I mean, we also weren't. We are definitely not living the way we were conditioned to supposed to be living, like at all. Like you don't need to shower. Like you said, you barely use soap and stuff like that. Like there's just so much like harmful chemicals and things like that. You got to be you know what. I mean, I kind of had this like vision of like the kind of practitioner I would be and the way that I would handle myself on social media per se, and in comparison to some of the other people in my very same situation or my very same position. I mean, they're just like constantly on on Instagram and posting things and talking about the scientific way that your body's going to turn one substance into another. And I'm just like, even for me to be reading through that is like a lot.
It's a lot of action, yeah.
It's a lot of, so they're constantly doing that. And they're constantly, don't use any plastic ever because you're going to completely fuck up your thyroid. They use more professional terms than that. But I mean, it's just like all the time, constantly every day. And I'm like, I don't want to be the fear mongering, kind. Like, they're, use common sense and like you're saying, question things and, be able to do, make your own decisions and stuff like that. But it's scary. Like I said, we're not living the way that we were conditioned, like the human body.
Yeah. I think it can be daunting too for a lot of people when you start hearing all the things that you're seeing and the fear mongering that you're seeing on social media and the news and whatever else, because it doesn't take a lot to make like a big change. And so like for me, like not using, like I was like, how can I make a better like impact in the world? And it's like, okay, I won't like buy things that like I won't buy soap that comes in a container anymore.
Right. I mean, yeah,
I'll buy like soap that like I buy at Whole Foods or whatever that has like that comes like in a brick or whatever, and
you
like
refill it.
And that's stuff. So I'm just trying to like make little small like changes, like.
And there's conscious decisions we can make all the time, and totally. That's awesome. Like wanting to be more, conservative for the planet, which sadly is in some trouble right now, with everything going on. But yeah, I mean, you really just have to, I think the main theme of everything is just intuitive to what's best for your body. I mean, I think it's just common sense stuff.
What about diet? What do you tell people about diet? We didn't really talk about like what your thought process. I mean, I talked about no sugar, but like what would you tell someone like was a good diet to start with?
Yeah, I mean,
blood type
and just do your research and eat like what your great grandparents ate. Like wherever they were born and raised, like whatever is local to that area or off the land or whatever. But the blood type is another. It's a dead ringer. There's not a lot of scientific evidence to back it up at the moment, but that doesn't matter. Like
I've heard the book Eat for Your Blood Type.
Eating right for your blood type is incredible. Like I mean, I've met, and I personally have experience, but I've met with a lot of clients that have been told they have to be vegan to save the earth now, and they can't eat meat at all because it's definitely going to cause disease for them and get very, very, very sick because they're not getting, they need, like their body in particular definitely needs meat. Right. Maybe not poultry so much. Like I'm not super convinced that we need to eat turkey or chicken, especially bacon. Right. Like that's one thing that if you're working with me, like we're gonna cut out pork completely because it's one of the dirtiest meats ever. But so that's pretty much it. Like I don't really deal in like extremes or absolutes or anything like that. But I also had experience with getting very, very ill when I didn't eat red meat. And like, because for my blood type, I create a lot of stomach acid. a lot of like enzymes that weren't being used because that's what they're, what our bodies have them for. So I got really sick, like literally like my stomach kind of created like a hole, like it was eating, like it was just, I know it was nasty, probably TMI, but for myself, and I was very sick. I didn't have cholesterol to produce hormones. I wasn't producing hormones correctly. I mean, so there's a lot of information out there that I just hope to provide each individual, client of mine. Like there's one client I was working with. She's a personal trainer. She's working out all day long, and she can't figure out why she's so tired all the time. And it was really, and she'd been to specialists and had all these panels of blood work done and all of these things, and no one could figure out what it was. Everyone told her that it's in her head. So many things were overlooked. I felt really bad. Like I genuinely care. Like when someone comes to me and they're spilling that they can't figure out what's going on, like they know more than I do. Right. Like they're teaching me what's going on with them, essentially. Then I'm just using the tools that I have to help them overcome what it is, if I can find root cause or whatever. But ultimately, she despised red meat. Like she didn't want to eat. She thought it was so gross and disgusting. And a lot of the times, like our bodies will kind of have like adverse effects to something that we like we really, really need. Like it's kind of like a thing with like textures and things like that. If something hits your throat wrong, then your body either really doesn't need it at all, or you are severely deficient in something. So anyway, we had to incorporate her eating some red meat at least once a week, and just for her, that was just the key that,
changed the game.
That changed the game. But I mean, as far as if you want to eat meat, if you don't want to eat meat, it doesn't really matter that much. Just eat for your blood type and eat what your great grandparents ate, not someone else's great grandparents that grew up in Ireland and your great grandparents grew up in Australia or what, you know what I'm saying? Like, so it really is so individual.
Yeah, totally. I kind of discounted the blood type stuff just because I read my blood type, which is A negative, and it was like the vegetarian diet, and I was like, I'm out.
That's not for me.
And and so there can be some confusion with that because like for me, like being a vegetarian like wouldn't coincide with where my ancestors are from and what they ate. Mm-hmm. So trying to find that balance, because I watched Forks Over Knives and I became a vegetarian for 3 weeks. And it was the worst 3 weeks of my life. I just really didn't like, I didn't feel good energetically. I wasn't in the right headspace or anything else. So like, I don't think cutting meat out of my diet is probably beneficial for me. It doesn't make me feel well, but it's also, I think there's some goodness to eating more vegetables.
Yes.
So,
oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think as a general rule, we could say, if you can be plant-based and eat mostly good, nutritious, whole foods, and usually like use the meat as like the condiment. So you have like, the size of your hand, the palm of your hand, maybe of protein, meat, whatever. And then the rest, just load yourself up with as many, plant foods as possible.
Totally. So what's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
So they can go to my site, which is SoCalNaturalHealth.com. I am very active on Instagram. So it's at your naturopath _Ash. I'm very active on there. Like people, I'm messaging with people all day there mostly. And then, so that's pretty much it for like the professional. I also have the SoCal Natural Health Instagram, which I'm kind of, again, trying to navigate how like I want to put my information out there, because it's a lot. I think, I want to handle things a lot differently than some of the other practitioners do. Like I don't have time to be on like doing that all day. I can interact with people and, share things and stuff like that. So anyway, but yeah, so SoCalNaturalHealth.com or Instagram.
Awesome. Well, I genuinely appreciate you coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Sharing your story with me. Like, it's fascinating to me. And like, I think that it just goes to show that we all have the ability to like live whatever life you're going to live, but then you have the ability to make changes wherever you feel they need to be made.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I honor you for the fact that like you had the glitz and the glamour of being in the adult industry, and I'm sure you're making great money doing that. And you had the courage to like get out of that with a child and try to make your way as a single mom in California, which that's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. It speaks to like your courage and like integrity and all those other things. And like, I learned a lot today. So like, I thank you for that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
No,
totally
it's
cool.
an honor to be on the show, and I really like the space that you hold for your guests to come on. And again, I haven't really talked openly about those things. I haven't really felt the need, but also just, the right platform. So this, I more than anything, I want hopefully to inspire people with my own authenticity and my own honesty and integrity, even if it might be a little uncomfortable, you know what I mean? So
Right.
I appreciate it. I mean, thank you for holding this space and making me feel comfortable enough to, to share and open up. And, again, not everyone is going to be met with the most positive outlook on, my past, but
Right.
it really doesn't matter, because we make our choice to live how we want, so.
I want to ask you one question before we sign off, or two questions,
sure.
and it'll be real quick. The first one is, if you had one lesson that you could teach somebody coming up in the world, just one lesson that you learned, maybe you learned it the hard way, and you want to save someone the heartache, what would that lesson be that you'd want to teach somebody?
A lesson to teach someone. I think that I would just say that it really is more difficult to disclude or judge or to be unkind. It takes a lot of energy to be those things. I think that it is so easy to just be a good person and be kind. So I would just say, take the easy way and be a good person.
Totally. And the other one is, if you had one person or one book or both that inspired you the most through your life, in the beginning, doing the naturopath stuff, whatever, what would that book be? Who would that person be, and why?
Oh my gosh. One book. Oh, that is such a tough one. Because in school, like, I had to read so much.
Oh, totally.
I
use this kind of like as a Rolodex, because it's like I go back and listen to the podcast as well. And it's cool because like I ask everybody this question, so I get to hear like all these books. Some of them I've heard of, some of them I haven't.
Yeah, there's this book called Becoming Supernatural.
Yeah,
is really good. It's really incredible. Like, just the mind-body connection and teaching you just exactly how powerful you are.
Is that Dave Asprey? Who is that?
That is Dr. Joe Espen. Oh my gosh, I never remember his last name. Hold on a second.
Becoming Supernatural. I know that book.
Yeah, it's a good. Let's see. Let me just Google it.
Yeah, I love Uncle Google. He knows everything.
He does. Becoming Supernatural. Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Oh, it's Dr.
Yeah, Dr.
Joe.
Joe.
I know that.
Everybody knows Dr. Joe. He's
the man.
He's like literally everybody's bae.
For sure.
Am I using that term correctly? I don't know
Before anyone else, right? That's what bae means, right?
Yeah,
totally.
So that's a great book. And then there's another one called The Body Keeps the Score, and it teaches you how.
I just downloaded that.
Okay, it's a good one. Just teaches you
Yes.
how like your stresses and your experiences are stored in the body. And like you said, lower back, there's a lot of liver talk about stresses and sadness and anger,
Yep.
how we hold that in certain organs. So those two books are awesome.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, I was listening to that. I got on audio and was driving up to Sierraville. And so I used that 8-hour drive or whatever it was to listen to that book. I didn't finish the whole thing because I had other things I was doing. But amazing book so far. And then what about a person? Like, who's the person that inspired you the most in your life?
Person inspired me the most. Well, I think I've sung his praises enough. My husband, he has inspired me a lot. Like someone I met or have not met, or just
Doesn't
anybody.
matter. Anybody.
Who inspires me? Oh my gosh. Husband.
It could just be your husband. That's totally
Yeah,
cool.
I
Like,
guess that's really.
I mean, I think
Yeah.
a lot of people that I've asked, it's been like a significant other or one of our partner or whatever, and there's a lot of truth in that. I think it's totally cool. Like, just hearing what you had to say about your husband on this podcast, it's like, I could see why you love that guy. You know what I mean? That's totally cool.
He's a lovable
And
guy.
I think he has a lot of traits that a lot of men should aspire to. You know what I mean? To be able to hold space for their partners to process whatever they need to process and be in touch with their emotions a little bit more.
And hold space for like yourself. Like, he taught me how to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, how are you doing that? Because I mean, we talked about it, but it's just, when you come from a certain background or certain traumas, we don't really know how to hold space like for ourselves. We are doing it for other people, even if we're not doing it intentionally.
Right.
So he has been very inspirational for me, for sure.
Well, good stuff.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time to come on. And
thank you so much for having me. Absolute
if there's
honor.
anything I could ever do for you, like in any way, please let me know. I'm always just a message away.
Vice versa.
I mean, it takes me 2 hours to get here with traffic, but like as far as like the crow flies, it's not that far. So anyway, well, have a good day, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.
All right, bye.
Thank you for listening to Getting Real with Josh Boyer. If you're loving the podcast, please leave a rating and subscribe. You can follow us on all social media platforms and YouTube at gettingreal_. You can also check us out at joshboyer.com.